I used to believe that after 20 years of marriage, you could predict everything about your partner. The way they sigh when they're tired, the rhythm of their footsteps coming down the hall, even the silence between words. My name is Michael Dawson, and for the longest time, I thought my life was steady, not exciting, not dramatic, just steady. My wife, Laura, was my anchor. We lived in a calm neighborhood on the edge of Milwaukee, where mornings smelled like coffee and rain, and evenings were quiet except for the sound of sprinklers and kids riding bicycles home before dark. Every day had its rhythm. I woke up before sunrise, brewed my black coffee, and read the news while Laura prepared for work. She managed corporate events, always organized, always on the move. She'd kiss me goodbye at 8 a.m. sharp, her perfume lingering in the air long after she left. By 6, she'd be back home, exhausted but smiling, and we'd eat dinner together in the same spot at the dining table we bought in our first year of marriage. Our 2 children, Ryan and Ella, were grown now. Ryan was finishing grad school in New York. Ella had just started working for a design firm in Seattle. So it was just Laura and me in that big, quiet house. Some nights, we'd talk for hours about the kids, our plans for retirement, maybe take weekend drives to the lake. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was peaceful. At least, that's what I told myself. Looking back now, I realize peace isn't always proof of happiness. Sometimes it's just the silence that hides what's breaking underneath. It started with something small, something that wouldn't bother most people. But when you've spent 2 decades sharing the same air with someone, you notice when the rhythm changes. The first Thursday after Laura's so-called wellness retreat, she came home quieter than usual. Her laughter, usually so easy, felt forced. Her eyes darted away every time I asked about the trip. She said it was wonderful, relaxing, that she needed to disconnect for a while. I nodded, believing her, or at least wanting to. But over the next few days, little things began to pile up like puzzle pieces that didn't fit anywhere. Laura had always been careless with her phone, leaving it on the counter, in the car, sometimes even forgetting it in the bathroom. Suddenly, it never left her hand. She'd flip it face down whenever I walked into the room. The first time I laughed it off. The second time my stomach tightened. Then, there were the messages. I'd see the glow of her screen at midnight, her face dimly lit while she smiled at something she never shared with me. I'd ask what was funny, and she'd say, "Oh, just work stuff." Work had never been funny before. The next Thursday, she mentioned she was meeting her sister Claire for dinner. "Girls' night," she said lightly, grabbing her purse. I remember watching her put on perfume, one she hadn't worn in years. It wasn't the scent that bothered me. It was the hesitation before she sprayed it, like she was deciding how much truth to cover with it. She came home around midnight, claiming they'd lost track of time. I didn't push, but something in her tone made my chest ache. The same tone she used when she didn't want me to notice she was lying. By the 3rd Thursday, it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was certainty I was too afraid to name. I found myself staring at the door after she left, wondering who she was really meeting, wondering if I even wanted to know the answer. That 3rd Thursday night was the longest night of my life. The house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort you but presses down on your chest. I sat in the living room pretending to watch a game, but my mind was miles away. Every sound outside, a car passing, footsteps on the sidewalk, made me think it was her coming home. When she finally walked in around midnight, she acted normal. Too normal. She kissed my cheek, smiled faintly and said, "We had such a great dinner. Claire says hi." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak, because if I did, something inside me might break open. That night, I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her steady breathing. I wanted to believe that everything was fine, but belief doesn't stand up well against evidence you can feel but can't yet prove. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't keep living in the dark, trying to pretend that doubt didn't exist. So, during lunch break at work, I opened my laptop and searched something I never thought I'd type in my life: private investigators near me. I found one. A man named Jack Rinaldi, former detective, over 20 years of experience. I called him. My hands were shaking, but my voice sounded calm. He didn't ask for details right away. He just said, "Tell me what's going on, Mr. Dawson. I told him everything, the late nights, the excuses, the secretive phone habits, the perfume. When I finished, there was a short pause on the line before he spoke again. "I've heard this story too many times," he said quietly. "I'll find out the truth for you. No assumptions, just facts." I transferred the deposit that same afternoon. When I hung up, I just sat there at my desk, staring out the window at the city below. People walking fast, phones in their hands, living their own stories, hiding their own secrets. That's when it hit me. Maybe everyone's life looks peaceful from the outside, until someone decides to look closer. A week passed slower than any I'd ever lived. Every day, I went through the motions, spreadsheets, meetings, polite smiles, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time my phone buzzed, my pulse jumped. Every time Laura laughed at her screen, I felt something twist inside me. On Thursday morning, Jack called. His tone was steady, like a surgeon about to deliver a diagnosis. "Mr. Dawson," he said, "I'll be following your wife tonight. You'll have an update by tomorrow." That night, Laura left the house wearing a pale blue dress I hadn't seen in years. She said she was meeting Claire again. Same story, same perfume, same calculated casualness. I stood at the window and watched her car disappear into the night. The hours crawled by. I didn't eat. I didn't move. I just sat there in the half-light of the living room, waiting for the truth to arrive. The next morning, Jack texted me, "We should meet. 9 a.m. at Cafe Veranda." When I got there, he was already waiting, a brown envelope resting on the table between us like a loaded weapon. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He slid the envelope toward me. "You'll want to sit down before you open that." Inside were photos, time-stamped, clear, undeniable. Laura wasn't with Claire. She wasn't even at a restaurant. She was at a small hotel on the edge of town, the kind that hides behind words like boutique and privacy guaranteed. She wasn't alone. The first photo showed her entering the lobby at 7:48 p.m. The second, a man arriving 10 minutes later. The third, both of them walking out hours later laughing, the same laugh she used to share with me. I stared at those pictures until my eyes burned. The cafe around me faded into a blur of sound, cups clinking, someone laughing, rain starting to fall outside. Jack's voice broke through the haze. "There's more, but you've seen enough for now." He was right. I didn't need the rest. The truth wasn't in the photos. It was in the hollow feeling spreading through my chest, the realization that the person I trusted most had been living a life I wasn't part of. When I got home that day, Laura was humming in the kitchen, making dinner as if nothing in the world had changed. I stood in the doorway watching her, my mind screaming a single question over and over: "How long have you been lying to me?" But I didn't ask it. Not yet. Because I wasn't done deciding what to do with the truth. I didn't sleep that night. The images Jack gave me burned behind my eyelids. Laura in that blue dress, walking beside a man who wasn't me, smiling like a woman without a care in the world. But what haunted me more than the betrayal was how organized it looked. She didn't sneak around nervously. She moved with confidence, as if she knew her alibi was untouchable. And then, I realized why. She always said she was out with her sisters, Claire, Melissa, and Naomi. Every Thursday, every single one of those nights. The next morning, I called Jack again. "I want you to keep watching," I said. "But don't just follow Laura this time. I want eyes on her sisters, too." There was a pause. "You think they're connected?" "I don't think," I answered. "I know." He didn't argue. A man like him had seen too much to doubt coincidence. Over the next week, I lived two lives, one in daylight, pretending to be a husband who didn't know, and one in the shadows, waiting for updates from the man who was slowly uncovering what my wife truly was. By Thursday, Jack called again. His tone was clipped, professional. But I could hear something underneath, disbelief. "Michael, I've seen a lot in my 20 years, but this is new." "What do you mean?" "Your wife showed up at the same hotel, same time, but she wasn't alone. Her sisters arrived too, one after another, like a schedule, and..." He hesitated. "They each met someone different." My hands went cold around the phone. "All of them?" "Yes, all of them." For a long time, I didn't speak. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the kitchen. 4 sisters, 4 separate lies. One pattern. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a system, a pact. That night, I didn't confront Laura. I couldn't, not yet. Not without making them feel the same shock I felt when I opened that envelope. So instead, I started planning. The confrontation couldn't be private. It had to be complete. It had to end all of them at once. 2 days after Jack's call, I sat in my study staring at the photos again. 4 women, 4 sisters, each one walking into that same hotel at precise intervals. 7:40, 7:50, 8 o'clock. Like clockwork. Like they'd rehearsed it for months. I remember whispering to myself, they even cover for each other. And that's when it hit me. They'd been using their sisterhood as an alibi, a shield of trust no one would question. That night, while Laura was asleep beside me, I decided exactly how this would end. If they'd turned lies into a group project, then I'd turn truth into one. On Saturday, I told Laura casually over dinner, "You know, it's been a while since we all had a family day together. How about we host lunch tomorrow? Just a small Sunday get-together. You can invite your sisters and their husbands." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Tomorrow? That's a great idea. I'll text them right now." I smiled and nodded, my heart pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. Within minutes, she was tapping away on her phone, laughing as replies came in. "They're all in. Even Naomi said she'll bring dessert." I told her that was perfect. Perfect indeed. That night, I stayed up late preparing. I connected my laptop to the big living room TV, loaded every photo and video Jack had sent me, tested the sound, the playback, the timing. Everything had to be flawless. There could be no interruptions, no chance to lie, to twist, to escape. By noon on Sunday, the house looked ready for a normal family lunch. Grill outside, drinks chilling, laughter in the air. But inside, the living room was a trap built out of truth. They started arriving right on time. First Claire and her husband Mark, then Melissa and David. Finally, Naomi and her husband Paul. They brought dishes, wine, laughter, everything but honesty. For a while I played the perfect host. I laughed at their jokes, served drinks, even flipped burgers on the grill. But every sound around me, the clink of glasses, the hum of small talk, felt fake. After 20 minutes, I took a deep breath and said, "Hey, before we eat, can I show you all something inside? It'll just take a minute." Laura smiled, unsuspecting. "Show us what?" "You'll see," I said, forcing a smile. We all moved inside. The sisters sat together on the couch, their husbands nearby, relaxed and chatting. I picked up the TV remote, my hand steady though my pulse was racing. "Before we eat," I began, "I need to share something that concerns everyone here." The room went still. I clicked play. The first photo appeared on the screen. The front of a hotel, time-stamped. Then another, Laura entering at 7:48 p.m., then Claire 10 minutes later. Melissa, 15 after that. Naomi right on schedule. At first nobody said anything. Then Mark frowned. "Wait, that's you?" He looked at Claire, confusion written all over his face. The next images made words unnecessary. Each sister with a different man, different nights, the pattern undeniable. Laura gasped. "Michael, stop this, please." But I kept my voice calm. "Why? You don't want them to see what I saw?" Melissa stood up, her voice trembling. "You had no right to spy on us." "No," I said quietly. "You had no right to turn lies into a family ritual." One of the husbands, Paul, slammed his fist against the table. "You mean to tell me all 4 of you?" No one answered. Only tears, trembling hands, and the sound of someone's breath breaking into sobs. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Laura finally looked at me, her eyes wide and wet. "You've destroyed us." I shook my head. "No, Laura, you did that yourselves. I just turned on the lights." The room erupted like a storm breaking loose after too much silence. Mark turned to Claire, his face pale. "Tell me this isn't real." Claire tried to speak, but all that came out were sobs. David stood, his voice shaking. "Melissa, is that you? At a hotel?" She reached for him, but he stepped back, his hands trembling. Paul just sat there, staring at the screen, whispering, "Naomi, how could you?" Laura dropped to her knees, crying, "Michael, please stop this. We can fix it. We can talk." But I was done talking. I looked at the screen. The frozen image of the 4 sisters walking out of the hotel together, laughing under the streetlights. And I felt a kind of numbness I'd never known before. That laugh used to mean family, comfort, loyalty. Now it sounded like mockery. I turned off the TV. The sudden quiet was deafening. Then the husbands started leaving, one by one, each dragging what was left of his life behind him. Mark pointed at Claire. "Pack your things. You're not coming home with me." David said nothing to Melissa, just took his car keys and walked out. Paul looked at Naomi and whispered, "You've broken something that can't be repaired." Then he followed the others out the door. The front door slammed 3 times, each sound heavier than the last. That left me alone with the 4 sisters, 4 women who had turned love into a weekly lie. Laura tried to grab my hand. "You didn't have to humiliate us like this." I stared at her, emotionless. "You didn't have to humiliate your husbands either. But you did. Together." Her voice broke. "Where are we supposed to go?" "Maybe," I said coldly. "The same hotel you've been meeting at every Thursday. You already know the way." For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, they gathered their bags and walked out. When the door finally closed behind them, I stood in the middle of the living room, the air heavy with perfume and lies, and felt something strange. Not triumph, not revenge, just stillness. The barbecue outside was untouched, the food was cold, the laughter was gone, but, for the first time in months, I could breathe without pretending. That night, I cleaned the kitchen, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark, listening to the quiet. It was the sound of an ending, and maybe the beginning of peace. The morning after the confrontation, the house felt different. Not just quiet, it had always been quiet since the kids moved out, but empty in a way that echoed. The kind of silence that comes after something irreversible. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty cup of coffee Laura had left the day before. It was cold now, like everything else between us. By noon, the phone started buzzing. The first call was from Mark. His voice was hollow. "Michael, I filed for divorce this morning. Thank you for showing us the truth." Then David called. "It hurts, man, but at least now I know who she really is." Paul's message was short. "Naomi's gone. Papers are coming." Each call felt like another nail sealing the coffin of a family built on lies. As for Laura, she didn't call. She didn't text. But 2 days later, her father did. "Michael," he said, his voice heavy, "I don't know what's wrong with my daughters. I raised them better. I'm ashamed." I could hear the pain in his tone. He'd lost 4 daughters in one day, not to death, but to dishonor. I told him the truth. "You didn't fail them, sir. They made their choices. I just stopped covering them up." Over the next few weeks, life moved in slow motion. I filed for divorce, sold the house, and bought a small apartment in the city overlooking the river. No more photos on the walls, no lingering perfume in the air, just space, light, and quiet. Ryan and Ella came to visit when they heard what happened. At first they were angry, not at me, but at their mother. "How could she do this to you? To us?" Ella cried. I pulled her close and said, "People destroy good things when they don't value peace. But peace always finds those who face the truth." The weeks turned into months. I started new routines, morning walks, reading at the park, cooking for myself. Every Thursday I'd smile to myself. The day that used to carry pain now carried freedom. Then one evening, about 6 months later, I ran into Laura at a small restaurant downtown. She looked thinner, tired, her smile forced. For a moment we just stood there, the past hanging heavy between us. "Michael," she whispered, "I've lost everything. My sisters don't even talk to me. I don't have anyone left." I nodded slowly. "You still have yourself. Maybe it's time to stop lying to her too." She looked down, tears falling silently. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, hate takes energy. I'd rather use mine to live. When she left, I didn't look back." There was no satisfaction, no vengeance, just understanding. That night, standing on my balcony, I looked out over the lights reflecting on the river and realized something simple but profound. You can't build peace on lies, and you can't destroy truth with tears. Laura and her sisters sought freedom through deceit and found emptiness. I sought truth and found peace. And for the first time in years, I wasn't someone's husband or victim. I was just Michael Dawson, a man who had learned that dignity doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from walking away without losing yourself.